Good afternoon, Australia. I'm sorry that we can't be with you in person today. You will have seen early this morning that I did try my best to get to you, but alas, that never happened. Last week we put together this short video, and the aim of that is to pass on some of the global insight that we've all gleaned from around the world since we were last with you in September 2019. I'm sure you all agree with me that that seems an awfully long time ago. Anyhow, let me just introduce you quickly to today's panelists, and then we'll get on with the rest of the video. Fiona FitzGibbon is the founder of Diversiffi Media. It's an independent, strategic commercialization and business development agency. They specialize in AdTECH and digital out-of-home. She has chaired many of our AdTECH panels in London and Amsterdam and been to some of the events as far afield as New York. Working with global brands, advertisers, media vendors, landlords, and asset management companies, her business helps deliver strategy and implementation across media, digital transformation, and commercial properties. She's a great media person to have on this particular panel. Tim Harvey, many of you may know Tim. He spent some time in Australia a couple of years ago. He's a former JCDecaux and View executive. He started in the out-of-home industry way back in 2004, so he's one of the people who makes me look quite young. He's built programmatic trading platforms, screen networks, and award-winning dynamic campaigns for media owners and brands and landlords pretty much across the world: Europe, USA, Asia, and South America. This year, we're delighted to say that Tim will be chairing our AdTECH Out-of-Home London conference, which takes place in December 2020. Last but not least, Stephanie Gutnik, currently based in New York with a global mindset and experience to match. She's currently a consultant with Outfront Media on their programmatic strategy. She has perhaps some of the best industry insight, gleaned in part from chairing our AdTECH events in London, Amsterdam, and New York, and she should be chairing our event in Toronto later in the year as well. She's been doing that for quite a few years now, and she's had a number of executive roles in the out-of-home industry for the last 7 years. She's a frequent public speaker, so she should be the best on this particular panel. You should never put that you're a frequent public speaker on a bio. Not a thing to do. But she represents the out-of-home industry at conferences from Taipei and Dubai, London, and Sao Paulo. She's a busy bee. She sits on the board of directors for the Digital Signage Federation and the Canadian Association of New York, and also sits on committees for the OAAA, the DPAA, the IAB, and the Ad Club of New York. Now, you'd think that she doesn't have any spare time, but in her spare time, Stephanie is working on a doctorate. And if you know Stephanie well, or you get to know her well, you'll know that she's keeping Manhattan's cake shops very much in business. So enough from me. Let's start with Stephanie.
Thanks, Adrian. And yes, I take it on as a personal duty to make sure that none of my favorite bakeries in Manhattan go under during this time. And hello, Australia. Truly do wish that we could all be there. My hitchhiking through Noosa story will be saved for another time, because this discussion is about out of home and where we all have been and what we've seen and done since the last AdTECH session. The three that I was at and shared most recently being going backwards, Amsterdam, New York, and London. What's very interesting about the AdTECH out-of-home series, and what I really love about the way that Adrian has constructed them, is like where you are, the audience seems very big these days, but it is a really intimate type of series that allows panelists and presenters to actually have conversations with those in attendance. So the main takeaway has always been ROI. What are people who are present going to do with the information that they've gleaned at this conference? And there have been an increasing number of outsiders to the out-of-home space who have built their careers either CPG, retail, they're on the brand side, they're working at agencies, they're working in media and tech companies that are only starting to look at the capabilities of our industry. So collectively, whether out-of-home representatives are on panels or in the audience, we have the opportunity to inform them about how we can collaborate. And they're also very open to frank discussions with us about why they're not buying out of home, which is a very common panel that we have had with the demand side that we just won't typically see in other spaces. So thank you for that. I'm sure your conversations today will be just as productive, especially when applied to this year and the next. One example of the forward-thinking nature of these sessions is a panel that we had in London, so last year, about what marketers would do in an upcoming recession. And that just goes to show why attending can be of such importance. I think there were many in the audience, even the panelists themselves, who were reluctant to think that this was something that could happen in the near future. Business is looking pretty good, but we had the discussion anyways, and I can think back to some of the action items and takeaways from that very conversation that we have now been applying as an industry and certainly as a band of marketers worldwide for the past 6+ months. So that was just an interesting way to look back at the discussions we've had here and how we can apply them moving forward. Another example, Facebook did some pretty interesting research combining social media and out of home. And collectively, we chased them down and had representatives from this work at our New York and Amsterdam conferences able to, again, bridge the divide there between out of home and the rest of the media space in a way that was super respectful and thoughtful. And there's definitely been some work on that from the discussion. So just want to say thank you to Adrian, to everybody who's been involved, and again, wish I could be there today because I know that the discussion is going to be fruitful.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'll just add in very quickly as well. Something that we kicked off in Australia last year was with Hivestack, who were kind enough to bring IBM along. And I think one of the best presentations of the Sydney event in 2019 was the lunchtime session with IBM, their agency, and Hivestack. You've continued that, Stephanie, I think, because Hivestack have done similar work with Fortune 500 companies. We had an example with Intel, I believe, in Amsterdam.
That's correct.
So it's good that we're getting lots of Fortune 500 companies in the space. Okay, Fiona is going to talk a little bit about, Fiona's been doing, I didn't say in the introduction, but Fiona also does huge amounts of volunteering work. Bloom, Prince's Trust, lots of other work in the charity sector. You're going to talk a little bit about some of the public service announcements that we've had.
Yes, thank you. It's been obviously a very interesting time, and one of the things that AdTECH has really brought to the fore is in the early stages of the coronavirus. So in each of those markets, we all went into lockdown. It was all very immediate, and the out-of-home sector, as I say, was absolutely key to driving the public safety messages. And as I say, out-of-home really, it came into its own in the immediacy. And AdTECH was the driving force very much behind that. So the immediacy that was needed, the agility that was needed at one of the most critical times to protect, independent and local communities with instant PSA messaging. And across the globe, not only did we see that immediacy and that agility, but it was the creativity that really absolutely shone. So for example, we saw the OAAA, they came out, they were working with the Ad Council, partnering with the CDC and the White House, and they launched the Alone Together campaign, Staying at Home Saves Lives. We also saw a fantastic campaign from the DPAA with their We Are the Counter-Virus campaign, and that was very much an instruction on behaviour to not catch, to avoid catching the virus. And then we even went to the individual players and a fabulous campaign from Ireland's Orb Screen, and they created Total Recovered, a fantastic campaign displaying positive messages for all those that recovered the virus, and that was distributed by Broadsign through their partners. So we saw a really good collection, and probably one of the reasons, as you mentioned earlier, I was involved in a campaign that was from the UK. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about that, because of where AdTECH really drove that distribution. So very briefly, lockdown in the UK started on the 23rd of March, and we didn't have everybody that was abiding and complying to the instructions of staying at home. And that morning we had three, on the BBC News, there were three junior doctors featured on their broadcast. They were coming off the night shift, exhausted, and they really had one message. And that message was, thank you for thanking us, which was very much a kind of a policy here in the UK, but it was thank you for thanking us, but the greatest help you could give us would be to stay at home. So very much that kind of resonated with me. So from my kitchen, I had the idea to create a one voice, unbranded, that was quite important, direct digital out of home campaign. Simple, straightforward, that would effectively support frontline workers and reinforce that much needed public safety notice to stay at home and stay safe. The creative assets needed to be free to all media owners. That was really important. And media and vendors. It needed to be adaptable to different screens, to different environments, and easily translated. That also was a really key area. So I jumped on the phone to old creative friends of mine who disappeared off for a couple of hours. Literally a few hours later, they created 8 brilliant messages, and we went live in 3 days. So we started in the UK, and very quickly it just traveled across the globe. And that's with 2 things. That's the generosity, which I'm going to come to in a minute, of our industry, but it's also driven by AdTECH. So very quickly we were across the UK. A lot of our independents also picked it up. One of the things to bear in mind is at this time, content was needed on our screens. We needed to get a message out there, and many of our big corporates, their first responsibility was to look after their employees. So we kind of did a service as well there. We were, as I say, we were across most markets in the UK. We were across the US, Lamar being the first ones really to put their hands up, and they went live with it across all of their digital screens. Picasso in Lebanon, they went live. We were in South America, Colombia. Australia, we had Val Morgan also that picked it up as well, and they started to push it, and then Canada. So through Hivestack, which I'm going to mention how they did it. But as I say, there were 2 really key things about the PSA campaigns for all of us, not just my campaign. The first is really important. We're a really competitive industry. We all know that, but the generosity from all corners of our discipline was absolutely fantastic. And we should never forget that, really, whether it was in distribution, whether it was housing the content, whether it was translating, it was fantastic. For example, Laura Davis Taylor and Sheldon Silverman, they were the first really to put their hands up, contact me and say, what can we do? How can we help? Brilliant. From a programmatic and AdTECH point of view, many of the programmatic platforms got in contact with me. An example, Hivestack, Andreas and his colleague Stephen Manson. And through their platform, through the Hivestack platform, they pushed the campaign across their multiple partners, across multiple and relevant environments. And it was in minutes. We could see where it was going. We were looking at the pacing. We were looking at, which screens it was in. So without AdTECH and the generosity of our industry, we would never have got that level of distribution in a really critical time. And digital out of home was the driving force of trying to take care of our communities and take care of our frontline workers. So something that as an industry we should congratulate ourselves on.
We should indeed. I think sometimes we do forget. I mean, the Americans are very, very good at public service announcements. And I think most of the industry associations around the globe, the OMA version in New Zealand, and I won't try to pronounce their new name, Cotterill, I think it's called, DSF, the DPAA, and the OAAA are all doing very good work with PSAs, but really came to the fore. So hats off to all of those, Fiona, and thank you for your work as well in that space. You made mention in there of all the different screen sizes and the different things you had to think about with screens. That brings us nicely on to Tim. Tim, I think, is one of the only people in the world who could really talk about standards in a sensible way. He's been working very closely with Outsmart, which is one of the industry bodies in the UK, and the IAB in the UK on some standards. And he's going to talk about those now.
Well, thank you very much, Adrian. And thanks again for organising a great panel. And just sitting here looking at this Zoom screen, I also think what a great ABBA tribute band we'd make as well. So moving swiftly on now to standards. That's just to make everyone still awake in the room. Let's share my screen. And I've got a few slides, so let's present them. So thank you for the opportunity for talking about Open Direct Out of Home and the work we've been doing with the UK Out of Home Standards Committee. So the purpose of the UK Out of Home Standards Committee was established to represent and address industry data and operational issues which affect, quite interestingly, both the buy and sell side of the out of home industry. And it operates on the basis to remit and address the data, technical and processing matters that have a common and positive impact across the industry. So if we try and illustrate that a little bit, there we've got the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising, the outdoor division on the buy side, and that's people like Talon, Rapport, Postscope, and Kinetic. And on the sell side, with Outsmart, we've got the media owners Global, Clear Channel, Ocean Outdoor, and JC&Co. And this makes the Out of Home Standards Committee. Some people know Mungo from Global, sitting there on behalf of Outsmart, and Gavin Lee from Postscope in the UK is the lead from the IPAO. Then we've got our technical group where we've got Gavin and myself, and in the data group there we've got Andrew Atherton, and the data group have been going for many years and have done great stuff like standardizing frame IDs, screen formats, classifications, brand and advertiser IDs, and it's really this sort of stuff when it comes together, you can actually start looking at the technical side and programmatic and automation. So what we have been working on is a programmatic standard. We've been working with the IRB Tech Lab as well over in the States. And the IRB Tech Lab looks after two particular programmatic ways of trading in the digital space. So there's OpenRTB, which we're familiar with auction-based transactions. Allows that individual ad impressions to be put up for a bid in real time. And it does require DSPs, SSPs, and exchanges for completing transactions. And the IB have got a digital standard called Open Direct, which is a direct non-auction based transaction. It allows discovery of available inventory and transaction on a variety of metrics. And it does require direct integration between buyer and seller. So two great programmatic standards there. This slide's quite useful because it sort of shows some differences and similarities between the two programmatic methods. So Open Direct enables that buy-side platform to discover available inventory, whereas OpenRTB, you're relying more on the deal IDs. The second line there, with OpenRTB, the final cost is set by the buy side. With Open Direct, the final cost is set by the sell side. In OpenRTB, it's not quite fully automated in that you need to create those deal IDs to do your bid transactions on. And we know at the moment that takes quite a lot of phone calls in the whole ecosystem. Whereas with Open Direct, it's fully automated from discovery through to buy, through to getting the playout reports. Obviously, OpenRTB is bidable transactions, but interestingly, both OpenRTB and Open Direct can both operate in the same sense of real time. When we get to enabling transactions based on target audience impacts and individual frames and units, both OpenRTB and Open Direct can do that job. But what Open Direct allows you to do is enable transactions relating to out-of-home specific products and dimensions, and we'll come to them in a minute, because we've got things like geographic distribution, format targeting, collection of frames, units, so you can have a richer form of targeting in Open Direct. So Open Direct 1.51 is where we've been working on. It's an extension of the Open Direct IAB schema. And these extensions are really around the product targeting function. Like I say, we want to be able to bring the real world aspects of out of home into that programmatic landscape. There's the basic set of Open Direct 1.51 in the digital realm, and literally we've only made some very minor additions around about organizations, basically to introduce the concept of the specialist buyers. And then basically it's when we come to creating orders and lines, the targeting aspect is really expanded into the physical space. Let's cover that in a little more detail. So really this targeting objects extension is all about allowing Open Direct to target those physical aspects of inventory, delivery, distribution, investment, and prohibitions that are quite unique to the physical digital space. So I'll describe in a little more details. So when we come to describing out of home, of course, we can describe it as individual inventory, frames, locations, and we can group these inventories into packs, how we want as a media owner to sell things. And of course, you have the concept of inventory being, is it frames that see an audience, or is it you want to sell audience that sees frames? So you can start to group together, describe your audience, turn them into profiles. Then we come down to the unique aspect of out-of-home delivery. So in out-of-home, we've got this concept of if you get a share of time on a panel, spot lengths, spot break lengths. And when we come to the distribution and pacing of campaigns in outdoor, what Open Direct allows you to do is describe distribution and pacing in terms of the frames. So it might be so many frames per day or per location. The audience, you might be receiving the same amount of audiences per day per location. Or you might be distributing and pacing a campaign based on investment. You want so much investment being delivered the same on every day. Or you might want more investment on weekends, more investment on certain time slots. But this targeting model allows all this granularity and customization. And finally, when it gets down to investment, obviously with OpenRTB, you're very much on the CPM, on the bid. But with Open Direct, you can price things by frame, obviously by impressions, cost per thousand. And you can also price a whole deal on a fixed price that just relates to the amount of frames or audience or any of the targeting parameters that you use. And finally, prohibitions. You also get to communicate with the product catalogs which prohibitions might apply to your estate. So in the case of political advertising, you might say, you can look at this pack, but you're not allowed to do any political advertising by the roadside. And outside schools, etc., you can make it quite clear that you won't be able to target this package or frames within this package with fast food or alcohol advertising. So in terms of a timeline, how long we've been working on this, I mean, this goes back quite a long way. At the moment in the UK, most of the main media owners, they've got some form of Open Direct API where you can buy inventory, and that started around about 2017. In 2018, I think the market realized that a few people were implementing this API in various different ways. So there was an opportunity to try and standardize that and bring all the great work that had been going on with the standards around screen formats, classifications, brand and advertiser IDs, start to bring this together in a single standard. So in 2019, I came on board to turn this into a fully documented, worked out, standardized, schemed standard. And earlier this year, we publicized the first version of Open Direct Out of Home. There'll be a link at the end of this presentation where this standard is completely set out in terms of the theory. There's worked examples in JSON, and there's work schemas as well. So everything is there, it's been implemented, and everything can work to a common standard. And so going forward into 2021, the IPAO and Outsmart members have committed to a full implementation of this standard in the first quarter next year. And we're committed to continually collaborate with the industry and the IB Tech Lab to evolve Open Direct Out of Home for wider use, not only in the UK, but beyond. So that's that commitment to Open Direct implementation in the UK, from Clear Channel, Global, Ocean, Deco, Postcode, Kinetic, Time, Rapport. But this is open to everyone. There's links here, and these links can be sent around, obviously, after the talk to all the attendees here. But please have a look. There's a great site there, a great GitHub site. It's all there, all open documentation, and everything you need to give to your technical guys to see how to implement it and how to have some real success with it. So thank you very much for your attention. Over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Tim. Excellent. I think Fiona had a quick question.
I am a great advocate of this. I think the work that you've done, Tim, is absolutely fantastic. It's been a conversation that we've all had for many, many years, not only in real basic terms, in standardizing language, let alone all the technical capabilities which you and your teams have brought to the fore. I know we're talking that outsmart from the UK perspective, but in your mind's eye, as this is rolled out and more people adopt it as their standard, which is what it should be, what are the implications for global usage? I know you shared some of those links, but is that something that all markets can adopt? Where does that fall with different maturities of markets? What's your view on that?
That's a really good question. And certainly we've designed this whole system with the global markets in mind. You know, we're very lucky in the UK that we've got standards around describing frames, audiences, locations, etc. But it's been made so if there's such an organisation or such standardisation in other countries to describe those basics of, you know, frame IDs, locations, frame types, etc., that can be plugged straight into this standard. So it's a great schema. It's a great transaction model, and it's extensible enough to say, I'm going to describe my frames using this standard. So in UK, it might be root, it might be space. In Australia, it'll be their similar industry body standard.
How is that reflected in the industry bodies? So we've got, you know, the Out of Home has fantastic trade bodies, and we've talked about them earlier in this panel. But are they also adopting it? Is it something that they can help push that out across the markets?
Absolutely, absolutely, and the support of international trade bodies is crucial. I know Gavin Lee's done a lot of work with the World Out of Home organisation, and there's local organisations within that group who are now spinning this off and sharing this standard among them. Certainly, there's been a lot of support from the OAAA in the US, and it'd be great to engage, you know, especially with the Australian body. In a similar way.
Brilliant. And there I do have, you know me, I can keep going. One of the questions really that comes to mind, it's something people have talked about a lot around programmatic itself, the whole end-to-end facilitation, is that either through these platforms, we will attract more revenues, we will attract new clients, and the same token, we also talk about smaller vendors having a larger share of voice or a larger share of revenues. Is that a reality within the whole programmatic and ad tech, or is that maybe not quite so true?
I think what programmatic gives is an amplification of what you've got. But so at the end of the day, if you're a small media network and you've got a very unique audience and you're very confident of the metrics and the evidence you've got of reaching that audience, then programmatic is going to work for you. But if you've got quite a bad network with bad screens and not a lot of audience and a bit of dishonesty in how you're reporting those figures, then it will just amplify how bad your network is. Right. So it's an amplification tool, but it doesn't give you the skills.
Well, great work. I think it's brilliant. And as soon as it's adopted and we all have that standardization, you know, the consolidation of our market and how we all talk to each other, I think it's going to be phenomenal.
Well, thank you. It's all down to collaboration. You know, the UK standards body have done great work already. You know, doing those standardization with screen formats and audience and route, etc. So we're literally standing on the shoulders of giants. But hopefully, it's a real great example and a real reason to get stuck in, and it shows what can be achieved when people collaborate and work together.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim.
And building on Tim's point with regards to programmatic, a reminder to everybody, it's a transaction type. People get very fussed about what programmatic means and so on. It's a way of transacting. So while you definitely should be connecting the pipes to have access to new types of demand or even just facilitate existing out-of-home demand that buyers now wish to transact programmatically, it's still your sales team and your inventory that's going to be speaking for you at the end of the day. So spot on, Tim, and driving that point home.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so we're done. Thanks, everybody. I'd like to thank our panelists. So thank you, Agnita, Annafred, and Benny. And myself, Bjorn. Have a great afternoon. I hope you really do enjoy the rest of the day. The drinks are on Joe Copley, I think, at 5 o'clock. Have a good one.